What's good, YouTube? In today's video, we're gonna be fixing a couple things on my Stance car. First of all, let me show you guys what it's looking like. All right, so here it is, my little Scion XB. Now, from the previous videos, as you guys saw, we was outside. We threw a car meet, and I appreciate everybody that showed out. We're gonna keep throwing car meets, so keep staying tuned. Now, basically, off camera, I did get a hood cable. So now this thing properly latches, thank goodness, because that was kind of annoying. I would hit a bump and this thing would just kind of unlock. My bumper also ended up just cooking itself even more, so that's not connected. But we have two things we need to fix in this video. Let me show you. All right, so first thing first is going to be under the hood. So as you guys know, I currently run an NA hood dump, which, to be honest, isn't the best thing performance-wise because it's not tuned. So what we are going to do is add an AFR gauge. If you guys don't know what an AFR gauge is, basically a gauge that measures your air to fuel ratio through your exhaust. Kind of like your O2 sensor. So it's basically another O2 sensor, but it goes, we're gonna throw it like right here, somewhere around there, and then we throw the gauge inside. Now off camera, I did end up getting a couple gauges because we're gonna need some for when we boost it. But let me show you guys what they look like, and I tested them all out and they work. This looks like a lot, but we have this one, which is trans temp. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use this, but we got it. Next one is our boost. That way it tells us how much PSI we're running. That one we need. Then next we have our oil pressure gauge. Same thing, that's a good thing to know. And then we have our wideband, which is the AFR. Now, all of these things we are going to need while the car is boosted. Now, obviously it's not boosted right now because we're breaking in the motor, but in a couple weeks or month or maybe two, whenever that is breaking in and done, then we can boost it and we'll already have those. Now, the other thing that we need to fix is basically right now, I don't have an evap line. So let's connect this and let me show you guys what I mean. All right, so if you guys don't know, currently you can see a fuel cell, right? So we need to make the evap line for the fuel cell because right now all the gases are just going into the cabin. And I had one of the buddies right in the back, hashtag Quito, and that boy almost fainted from how much the gas smells inside the car. So what we're gonna do is make an evap line, and I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. You can buy everything from like Amazon, it's pretty cheap. Now, ignore the mess I got, because you guys already know. My garage has been a mess since I started taking apart the XB. It's slightly getting better, but I'm just like all over the place right now. So I'm gonna show you guys everything I got for the evap line and break it down into what I think I'm gonna do. So basically, most important thing is going to be this little silver part. This is a rollover vent valve that I think I got from jegs.com. You could probably find it on Amazon. Basically, this makes it so that if the car ever does roll over, it cuts the fuel. So then fuel isn't going to spill outside of this, at least. So we already have this fitting on the fuel cell. We're going to connect the vent valve straight onto it, and then we have a 150 degree 6AN PTFE fitting. Basically, that's just going to angle it downward. Then from here, we're gonna go straight down, and then we just have extra fuel line PTFE that we've been using throughout the whole car. That's gonna route it down, and it's gonna connect to this filter. This is basically a 6AN male to a 6AN male to then a female to a barb fitting. Basically, this is just like an air filter like you would use in the engine bay, except it is filtering gases, if that kind of makes sense. We're gonna put this outside of the car, that way all the smell goes outside. I wanna mitigate the smell as much as possible because my girlfriend rides in the car and she's kind of sensitive to the smell. Honestly, I drove this shit the other day to the car meet and like through my street. I think it's just because I'm excited to have this car back that honestly, I don't even think about the smell. But we need to route this because safety purposes. So we're gonna do this first, and then we're gonna do the AFR gauge because that AFR is a little more complicated. So let's get to it. Now that you guys are inside the car with me, let's put this on. So this part is actually the easiest one because it's just literally screwing this thing on. All right, so actually change of plans. I think it's gonna be best if we just throw it towards the wheel where the spare wheel goes because it's just gonna look cleaner.
All right, so here I'm just trying to make sure that the hole is big enough for the fitting to fit through, but not the filter, and I'll explain in just a second.
Now, I think this is going to be it for the size of the hole. And I only say that because I think it might be a little bit better, so that way I don't have to make that big of a hole, if I put the filter on through the bottom of the car. Now, obviously, the car is lowered and it's going to be a little bit tricky, but we could always just raise the bottom of the car. So I could just basically, that's why if you see me in the time lapse, I'm kind of just measuring it like this. That way the fitting fits, and I could just throw some rubber around it so it sits there, and then we should be good. So I just got to get a rubber hose, cut that to the size of that to make sure, and see if this fits. All right, so I found it. Let's measure one more time. All right, so it is from here to here. All right, so now that we got it measured, let's go inside, cut this out, throw these fittings on, and then hopefully our line should be smooth. Now, we need to get fuel line like this, and then same thing on the other side. So what I'm gonna do is start with the straight one first, just because that's probably gonna be the harder one. So I like to just start just bare fitting. Gonna remove this one. Now when you remove this PTFE one, just be careful, because that little silver thing comes out, okay? Boom. All right, so that's a fitting took apart. Now, next step, you're basically going to take your one edge, as you guys can see where those fibers are, and then you see the inside, that black rubber. Okay, so you want to put this first. You know, sometimes it is a little hard to get through at first because it's made tight. So once you get it in there, I like to just hit it a couple times until it goes through. As you guys could see, it's starting to go through. So that black part is actually where this is gonna go. Okay. Now when it's like that, you want that rubber part to get all the way up to the end. Okay, so usually what I also tend to do is hit that up against the floor. Boom. Now when it's like that, you look real close, you could tell. So once that's there, you're able to stick this in. Now this should be really difficult to get it fully in. Boom. Once it's fully in, you're just gonna pull this upwards and tighten it. So right now I have about half of that bottom part. You see how you see this little bit? Okay, that's good, because we need to get this 19 mil all the way in there. Boom, that's in there. Now that that one's in there, you guys see, this should honestly be straight, so I probably could have done it a little bit more. You could basically screw this thing back on. All right, so now that the line is cut, I do believe it's a little bit long, but that is okay. I'd rather it be long than for it to be short. All right, so all that's left is to get under here and connect it. This is tight. Everything's already tight. All that's left is to tighten this onto it. I should be able to see it through here. Oh yeah, we're lit. Luckily, the bumper's barely on. There it is. Now, as you guys could see, it sits pretty high. If I didn't put the washers, it would have been like down here, and I kind of don't want that. I mean, it's not going to scrape anytime soon, but never know. Now, you guys seen how it ended. Basically, this is how the fuel cell looks. I know that line is a little long, but if anything, we could always just go back and cut a little bit off that. Make it a little bit straighter, but I think it looks good. Eventually, this will all be sound deadened and sealed, so nobody will look at that. As you guys seen, it is dark already, so we're gonna end today. That is it. We finished EVAP. All that's left to do is do the AFR, and then this thing should be A1, and I don't have to worry about running too rich or too lean. We'll pick back up tomorrow. All right, guys, so we ended off last video with finishing the EVAP line on the XB's fuel cell. Now today, It's a couple days later, but we are going to get the AFR gauge fully set and done, and let's see if we can get it working. The gauge that we ended up buying was the wideband glow shift AFR gauge, okay? So this is the gauge itself, which connects to this module right here. This module right here has one for the sensor analogy output. Then you have one for the gauge and for the power itself. Now obviously the power is just going to be these, which these are the ones that we're gonna have to splice and connect to a fuse or a relay. And then we have the actual sensor itself, which goes into your exhaust. So I actually had to get these O2 bungs that you basically weld onto your exhaust, and then it basically just threads into the sensor. All right, so we're actually just gonna do this on the floor because I think it's gonna be easier. So technically 1 foot is right here, okay? So I think it's gonna be best if we put the gauge on this side over here. What I am gonna do is basically the header sits like this. So I know that this clears. So I think if I put this the opposite way, it should also clear. That way they kind of just go against each other. And yeah, honestly, I'll probably measure a little bit better because this is a size 11 and that's kind of big. All right, so now that the sensor fits in there, boom, we just gotta weld the bung on there and we should be chilling. Let's start it. All right, so the bung is welded, sort of. It looks kind of ass, but that doesn't matter. Okay, now we are going to get to the wiring. So, from what I found out, red is ignition 12, yellow is constant 12, orange is if I want the gauge to dim, which I don't really care, and then black is ground. So we're just gonna wire those to the fuse panel on inside the car. I think that's gonna be easier, and I'm just gonna try to do these fuse taps. And we'll see how that goes. All right, so unfortunately, off camera, buddies came over and we were wiring the gauge, and it just keeps turning on and off. So it'll cycle once, it'll turn off, and then a second later, it'll cycle once and turn off. And I wired it straight to the battery, so I don't think it's the battery. It's got to be something like the controller itself, because the sensor looks pretty good, but AI seems to think it's the controller. So I think we're gonna have to buy a new gauge, and we will pick back up once the new gauge comes in. Let's go. All right, so it's been like 2 days. Ignore my hair. I just got back from work, and I'm wearing a shiesty in the hot sun all day, so it's, you know, it's bad. But the new gauge came in, and we tried a different brand, but officially we got some AEM. So let's get to putting this on. We're gonna make this install pretty quick. Like the glow shift, AEM is very similar, but it has more options because it is optimized for other stuff and more high-tech stuff that we don't really need. So out of all these wires, all we're gonna do is plug in the red, which is ignition, and then the black, which is a ground, and that would be all, okay? Other than that, we're gonna plug this end into the gauge, and then the sensor into the gauge, and that should be it. It should be pretty smooth. There is no modules, it's already in the gauge. All right, so let me give you guys a quick update because I think we've wired it all up. Finally, it took me a little bit, but I did it. All right, so my ground is connected to this ground right here by the kick panel or whatever, and then I did the add a fuse and I tapped it into the one that does the sunroof, because sunroof you can only do while the car is in the on position or on. So let's just test it out so I can show you guys. The one accessory still off, on, and it's on. All right, so right now it's just heating it up, so it'll tell us when after it fully reads. It might be a little bit off. I didn't fully tighten the bung, or the O2 sensor, so let's just see. 23, holy shit. Well, at least we know it reads, but like, why is it 23? That is insanely high. All right, so it is the next day. Now, yesterday we wired up the gauge, found that it works. but it wasn't reading properly because my welds were bad. So now we've re-welded it yesterday. Let me show you. I know you guys are gonna clown me in the comments with these booger welds, okay? But I did a smoke test on it, and I only saw one fluent flow of smoke coming out of it, not a bunch of little ones. So I think we're good. We're just gonna throw it on the car before we heat wrap it, and hopefully it reads better, I guess. All right, so this should be quick and easy. We're gonna put it on, test it out. If it works, I will take it back off and heat wrap it. I know the camera is kind of angled weird, but it's me just trying to measure the temps, okay? So we're gonna take this around the block and see how this does. All right, I'm gonna give it a second. I'm gonna let this thing start warming up, and then we'll go. I would just take it around the block. I had to take the bumper off because this shit broke. Oh, damn. So I'm sure that you guys understand that this is my first AFR gauge install, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure on how to read this properly, so I've been kind of just going back and forth with like ChatGPT to see if I'm doing it properly. And to my understanding, the car when it was fully warmed at idle was around 16 to 17, whatever this thing is called. And to my understanding, that is a little bit lean, but it is at idle, so that it's possible. I guess I would say normal, or it is okay because it's just idling, it's not under load. So then when we did take it around the block, and as you guys saw, every time I would accelerate, the number would go down. And I think the lowest I saw it go down was maybe 13, 13.5 or 14. So I did say I was averaging about 14, maybe 14.5 to 15, which is a little bit lean, but to my understanding, it is not like detrimental to the engine. Obviously, I am running a hood exit on a stock ECU with a mildly built motor. It's gonna run a little bit different because I'm not tuned. If it was running lean and I was tuned, then that's a different story. I'm probably gonna do a couple tests off camera just because those are kind of boring, but it's basically me gonna try to do a leak test to see if maybe the exhaust is seeing more air, or if there's a leak in the intake, to see if maybe that's why we're running lean, and then the ECU is trying to compensate so it thinks we're running lean. Yeah, but I think that's about it. Obviously, the gauge is not fully mounted yet, and it's probably not going to be mounted for a while, just because I think I'm going to mount all the 3 gauges, which is going to be oil pressure, boost, and then the AFR once I'm fully boosted, and I'm going to make it try to look real nice. Not too OEM, because obviously gauges, you can't really make those look OEM. And yeah, we're gonna put them all on the cluster on that little piece that I ended up taking out, like I said earlier. But yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. I fucking appreciate you guys so much. You don't understand. We are at 800 and something subscribers. You guys have been killing it all on the videos, and I appreciate it so much. I'm gonna keep coming out with banger content. We're gonna keep modding the XB, and we're gonna keep being different. I appreciate you guys so much. Stay tuned, hit the like, subscribe, and we'll be back next week. Peace.